Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Financial Issues. We are a ministry, and we're here to help you defund darkness through biblically responsible investing with the strategy that we provide to our partners, and to encourage you to be joyful, generous givers to fund the light in ways that will help promote kingdom work in the earth. Well, I hope you're ready, because today we've got a lot to cover in just a little bit of time. Our phone lines are open, by the way. 610-363-1110 is the phone number. So inflation is creeping back into our wallets little by little. Tariffs are shaking up global trade. Even Warren Buffett has weighed in on what tariffs could potentially mean for investors. But as always, we're going to break this down through the lens of biblical stewardship, because we know that we manage God's money, God's resources, and that's what matters to him. So food and housing, the real inflation story. Let's start with something we can all feel: food and housing prices. In January, egg prices shot up 15.2% in just 1 month. Year over year, back out, let's put this in perspective. Egg prices up 53%. Now, this is not really due to fiscal spending or monetary policy. This is more due to the bird flu that has caused the destruction of millions of livestock in this country. And hopefully, that will be a transitory problem, unlike the inflation that we experience. According to the Department of Labor, eggs alone made up 2/3 of the entire monthly increase in food prices. So hopefully, food inflation is not too far on the rise again. So when the government tells you that inflation is cooling, just take a look at your grocery receipt rather than the inflation numbers posted on the Department of Labor website. It's not just food. Housing is squeezing families even harder, especially the potential first-time home buyer who is seeking the American dream of home ownership. In December, the S&P CoreLogic Home Price Index rose 3.9% year over year. Well, that number alone, 3.9, doesn't seem like a big number when you look at it on the surface, but it's much higher than the Fed's 2% target for overall inflation. But let's zoom out a bit. Since February of 2020, home prices up 52%. Yep, I said 52, not 0.52, not 5.2, but 52%. Here's the real issue. First-time homebuyers, young families, working-class Americans don't have the benefit of the equity that grew at that pace. So if you owned a home and the price of your home increased 52% over the last 5 years, you sort of have a benefit, and you probably have a lower mortgage rate. But people who don't own homes didn't have the benefit of that equity growing at that same rate. So the Fed's loose monetary policies from 2020, plus spending and printing levels of money at insane levels by Congress, have really priced them out of the market. And here's the dirty little secret that you have to read between the lines to see. If real home prices were included in the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, which is the gauge of inflation, instead of the owner's equivalent rent number, which is only up 27%, 27 versus 43, if the former number would have been used in CPI, we would have seen double-digit inflation in 2022 instead of the 9.1% peak that we saw. So the government's played games with the numbers while families were gaslighted about their real economic struggles. Now, just as inflation was supposed to be cooling off, we've got tariffs hitting the economy. Another battlefront in the economic war. Starting today, a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada remains in place, and an additional, or is put into place, remains in place. I guess Trump announced it, but it goes into effect today. And an additional 10% tariff on China takes effect. Why today? Well, tomorrow, March 5th, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party unveils its economic blueprint for 2025. So they're going to have to go before their people and explain how they're going to reach their 5% GDP growth target, and more importantly, how they'll be responding to the Trump administration's trade policies. This isn't random. This was strategic. It is a 4D chess move from the guy who literally wrote the book on the art of the deal. The U.S. is applying pressure before China even gets a chance to announce their plans, forcing them to go on defense on how they will save their people from evil U.S. tariffs. Now, tariffs always bring about strong opinions. Over the weekend, Warren Buffett gave his take, landing firmly in the tariffs will cause more inflation camp. His words, he said, well, the tooth fairy doesn't pay the tariff tax, the consumer does. Well, who actually pays the price? Now, technically, the importing companies, the middlemen, pay the tariffs, and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection agencies collect it. But here's the real question. Are foreign manufacturers going to lower their prices to absorb that cost, as the Trump administration puts forth, or will U.S. consumers get hit with higher prices? History suggests that the consumer gets the bill, but consider this. There's a lot of moving pieces of the economy right now. What if prices go up, but taxes go down? Or you get a Doge dividend check. Since this is financial issues, you may be wondering, how does all of this impact investments? Well, Warren Buffett isn't worried. He's one of the world's and the U.S. most successful long-term investor. In his strategy, he's still betting on America. He made it clear he's keeping his money right here in the U.S. In his annual shareholder letter, he wrote, Berkshire will never prefer ownership of cash equivalent assets over the ownership of good businesses. Very similar to the FISM strategy. We believe that we're investing in real businesses. In a follow-up interview, Buffett was asked why he keeps his portfolio focused on America. And he said this, it's the best place. I was lucky to be born here. Well, Buffett knows what we all know. America is still the best place to invest long-term, even with short-term problems. Short-term pain, make no mistake, is likely coming. And our neighbors to the north, they're already talking retaliation. Canada. The Ontario Premier Doug Ford went on national TV yesterday saying Canada will respond like they've never seen before if these tariffs hold. He even threatened to cut off electricity exports to the U.S. and stop nickel shipments, which, by the way, supplies 50% of the nickel used in U.S. manufacturing. That could cause some pain in the U.S. manufacturing sector that is just now starting to emerge from its several-year recession. So inflation's real culprit has been out of control government spending. So while tariffs can add some inflationary pressure, let's be real, the biggest driver of inflation isn't tariffs. It's the runaway government spending of the last 4 years. The printing press went into warp speed after COVID. Plus, Doge is now uncovering decades of waste, fraud, and abuse that have drained the American taxpayer. And we've all been paying for it. But don't worry, Doge is on the job. Elon Musk, Department of Government Efficiency has done a welfare check recently. So Musk recently said in a cabinet meeting that he had asked government employees to submit a list of 5 things that they had accomplished in the previous week, just to answer an email. Didn't have to be a big, elaborate performance review, and it wasn't intended to be. It was intended to be a welfare check. His reason? Well, he believes that a number of people on government payrolls are either dead or fictional individuals. We're literally paying people who don't exist, just like we do with Social Security. So is it any wonder that inflation is out of control? There's no question that the Trump factor is shaking things up, and you know what? It needed to happen. The old status quo wasn't working. In fact, it was completely broken. The elites got away with everything, including covering up Epstein's atrocities. Career politicians making $200,000 a year somehow end up being multi-millionaires. And taxpayers were forced to fund every war and every so-called humanitarian effort to rebuild after those wars, all while politicians have been selling out the average American. Riding this ship isn't going to be painless, but at least we've got a chance to keep it off the ocean floor. So folks, stick around. We're here to remind you that God is still in control. We serve an awesome God who owns every resource, and it is our goal to help you be a good steward and serve the Lord well with the resources that He's given you. Stay tuned. We're going to be back with more financial issues right after this.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay, or to go, to remain the same, or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Every day, a child walks into school carrying more than just a backpack. This child carries the weight of loneliness and spiritual darkness. But there is hope.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God.
That He loves all of us. He pays for our sins.
By sponsoring a child, you could help them discover Jesus. Go now to reachOurSchools.com and bring the light of Christ into the life of a child. That's reachOurSchools.com.
Hi, this is Shana Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Hey, folks, our phone lines are open. If you've got a question about a financial issue, if you're a partner, maybe you have a question about your portfolio, maybe you're tuning in for the first time on one of our 2 new radio stations on the CSN network. We have KYML 88.1 FM in San Diego, California, and KXOA 88.7 FM in Joshua Tree, California. So if you're tuning in for the first time and you're wondering, what is this biblically responsible investing? How does this work? Why is it important? Am I doing it? Should I be doing it? Those are all great questions. You can give us a call if you're listening live. 610-363-1110 is the phone number to call. And you'll need to get your call queued up right now if you want to make sure that you get in on this first part of the show. 610-363-1110. Well, Seth, I know I was out for vacation last week, and it was a much-needed vacation. It was really great. I could have used another week on the boat for bring my cortisol levels down a little bit more, but my waistline would not have liked me very much.
Well, Shana, we're delighted to have you back. You look well rested and great, and I know our partners are thrilled for it as well. So we did get a nice little backlog of questions here. So
we do. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's start with Dennis. Good friend of ours, Dennis, a longtime partner, 56 years old. Dennis, hope you and Patty are doing well. He's saying, good morning, Shana. Patty and I have a $3 million estate. And although we currently have a trust, we set it up prior to us finding FISM and understanding our stewardship responsibility to give back to God's kingdom when we go home to be with Jesus. We'd like to find an estate planner who has kingdom giving in mind. Do you have someone that you can recommend? And just for clarity, we don't need a financial planner, so looking for an estate planner. What do you think for Dennis?
Yeah. No, I don't have a list of anyone. I think that there's a really important team that you need whenever you're putting together all of your financial plans. So, you have a tax person who is going to help you with some of the strategies that we recommend. We recommend taking a look at your qualified versus non-qualified money. An estate person, estate planner. You have to be a little bit careful with these people because a lot of times they do assemble a team for you. And so if you go to an estate planner, a lot of times you'll be introduced to life insurance, you'll be introduced to annuities. Some of those things don't really fit well in the financial issues strategy that we put forth. So you need to have, usually a financial planner is sort of the quarterback of that team. And so, they're not a licensed professional tax person. They aren't qualified to write wills and trust and things like that. But that financial planner is usually the one, especially if you find one who is very kingdom minded, that sort of puts together the plan. So a financial planner, if they're really good, they will know things about planned giving. They will be able to talk to you about stewardship. They'll be able to sort of help you put together a blueprint for your estate plan. Then you can go to an estate planner, a lawyer to get the legal documents that you need. You'll be able to, they'll be able to pull in expertise from your tax person when they're working on different kinds of strategies. So, the most important thing is if you can find one who is kingdom minded and who does know about kingdom giving. So, the blueprint really starts with you. I find that it's not really a great idea a lot of times to go to a professional and then have them tell you what you should do. So, the first step to me as you're coming up with an estate plan is to think about some of the things that you've obviously been thinking about since you found financial issues. And that is, the premise that the belief that we have that God owns everything. And so, we're to be good stewards with what God has given us. And so, in private practice, one of the first things that I ask my clients when we get to that estate planning part of it is, who are your beneficiaries? And what does your current giving look like right now? So a lot of times people can use their current giving as sort of a blueprint for their estate plan. So, let's say that you do the tithe, you do a 10%, giving back to the Lord of your increase, and then you do extra giving as well. And, you look at that, tax time is a great time to look at that because now you're getting all your giving statements in. And so maybe you start to look at that and you think, okay, well, I'm giving 10% to my local church, and then I have other ministries or other causes that I give to above and beyond that. Maybe it all totals 15%. Well, take that to the Lord in prayer. Maybe you want to apply that to your whole estate. And maybe you want to say, when I go home to be with the Lord, I'm going to have 15%, 10% go to my local church, 5% go to other kingdom causes that I believe in, and the other 85% is going to go to my people heirs. Well, then you start to take a look at how your assets are already set up, meaning what kind of accounts that they're already in, because you very likely have some accounts that are going to be taxed when the money comes out, like traditional IRAs, 401ks. You may have some money that you have already paid taxes on that's never going to be taxed, for example, in Roth accounts. And you may have some money that you're paying taxes on along the way in a non-qualified type of account. So, you want to take a look at the tax consequences of the distributions there. And let's say that you're like most retirees these days, and your liquid net worth is really concentrated in your IRA where you're going to pay taxes when you get it out. Well, you can start to structure that. The simplest thing to do is to use that money to fund your your death giving. So when you go home to be with the Lord, what then goes to the kingdom, because that's the best way to get out of paying those taxes there. So, we did a teaching for our partners on planned giving. We will be doing that again in the future. I don't have a timeline on that. I may be shooting myself in the foot by saying it, because now people are going to start asking me all the time when we're going to do it. But I do believe if we don't have it available for partners on the website, maybe you can contact Pat and get that recording if you happen to miss it. I know we did have it up for a while, but so unfortunately I don't have a name that I can give you, but what I would strongly suggest is that you have a very good blueprint, just meaning that in your own words, you can describe to a professional that you're going to go to exactly what you want to see happen. Now, they may have some suggestions on how to improve that, but what I found is that a lot of times estate planners don't really have a good grip on the tax consequences of how everything works, and sometimes they don't have a really good understanding, or don't put giving in its appropriate place, and don't give it priority. So you're the one that's going to stand before the Lord and give the answers. So spend some time praying about and coming up with a good blueprint, and then seek out that professional help. And maybe you want to ask some people that are very generous, that giving is important to them. Maybe you want to ask them who they used.
Awesome, Shana. Let's get a quick one here before the end of the segment. John, not a partner, saying, I was told that IRAs with beneficiaries listed will go through probate with the rest of my estate, home, etc. Is this true or not? And John really enjoys the show. Glad you do, John.
Yep. So the quick answer to that is when you have an IRA, a 401k, an annuity, a life insurance plan, those tend to be non-probate assets unless you don't have beneficiaries listed, or you list your estate or a trust, or not a trust, but if you list your estate as the beneficiary, or you don't have beneficiaries at all, then it has to be probated with the rest of your estate. So the way that it works is that, let's say that you have an IRA account with XYZ brokerage company, and you pass. Well, your beneficiary, which is most likely your spouse, or if you're not married, somebody else, they're going to contact the custodian. The custodian is not going to ask for a copy of your will. The custodian is not going to ask which probate court that you're using. They are going to ask for a copy of the death certificate for the owner of the account. Once the death certificate comes in, the account is set up in the beneficiary's name, and the assets are then moved to the account of the new beneficiary. So, I've been in private practice for 25 years, and this is how it works. When I have a client that dies, their heirs contact me. We get the death certificate, and the money transfers very quickly once all the proper documentation has been received, and there is no probate process for that part of their estate. Well, let's shift gears to our stewardship verse of the day and close out this part of the show. It comes from Mark 9:36 and 37. And he took a child, put him in the midst of them, and taking him in his arms, he said to them, whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. So, the world often considers children unimportant, and sometimes an interruption to things that they consider more important. I can see this happening when adults are trying to pay attention even just to Jesus' teaching while their child tugs on their shirt and is trying to get their attention. We often respond to children as being interruptions, unfortunately. And we sometimes tell them, shh, or put a hand up, not now, when they're trying to get our attention. But this verse shows that God deeply values children, their innocence, and their spiritual growth. Well, guess who else knows that children are important to God? Satan does. And children become a prime target for Satan because children are important to God. So I've come to learn that whatever is important to God needs to be important to me, and it will be when my heart is aligned with God. Well, Daniel was only 8 years old when he stumbled upon pornography for the first time. Shame and confusion overwhelmed him until his cousins invited him to attend Crossroads Kids Club. There he encountered God's word, and that truth set him free. Now, at age 16, because of Crossroads, he stands firm in his faith, free from addiction. So, folks, for the next couple of weeks, we are asking you to consider supporting Crossroads as well, because they are there for children. They go into public schools. They have after-school programs. They get to meet face-to-face with children. They get to hear children's hearts. They pay attention to them. And most importantly, they tell them about the love of Jesus. So, would you join in our campaign? Go to financialissues.org and you'll see the information right there on the landing page. I think in the next segment, Seth's going to give an update on where we are on that campaign, so make sure you stay tuned for that. We'll be back with more financial issues. If you're listening to the short version of the show, we wish you a good
day. My name is David Hunsinger. I live in Edgewater Park, New Jersey. I came across financial issues by accident. I believe it was on a certain TV station at that time. I got interested in finding out more, so I went online to find out more, and that's when I became a more active participant in financial issues. I did have some interest in investing prior to getting involved with FISM. Biblical investing I thought was more important, so obviously I changed my approach. I know I'm much happier for it. I'm probably more at ease now. It's probably the best way to sum it up in terms of I don't necessarily worry about if this is going to happen, if that's going to happen. I don't worry about that. If I was to encourage somebody to participate in FISM, I would use myself as an example. I've been very pleased to participate. If God's happy, I'm happy.
Align your investments with your faith. Become an FISM partner today at financialissues.org.
Colossians 1:13 tells us, "For he has rescued us from the kingdom of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his dear Son." Right now, children across the country are waiting for that rescue. They're facing challenges like broken homes, peer pressure, and insecurity. But through Crossroads Kids Club, these children are finding something greater: hope, love, and a future in Christ.
If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now.
I learned that God loves me just the way that I am.
Your support can transform young lives, planting seeds of faith that will echo into eternity. Will you help us reach 100 kids? By sponsoring a child and by writing them a personal letter of encouragement, you can shine Christ's love in a place where it's needed most. Visit reachOurSchools.com today and change a child's future forever. That's reachOurSchools.com.
Welcome back, folks. Financial Issues. Good to be here. Seth Sam, Sam Case taking you the rest of the way here on the show. We got the Studio A team here. It was great to have Shana on the program there. Hey, continue to pray for the believers in the Carolinas. I've heard from several of you, both James and George, each of you representing North and South Carolina, both of you doing well, and I'm so grateful for that. Anyone else in that region, please let us know how you're doing and how we can pray for you with those wildfires down there. I do know we have quite a few listeners in that area, and just brutal, especially for those in North Carolina who might be coming off of still the effects of those hurricanes from back in the fall. So know that that we are praying for you, and FISM is with you here. Hey, folks, Shana had mentioned we're in the midst of a campaign with Crossroads Kids Club. I'm so honored and thrilled to be with Crossroads Kids Club in this campaign, bringing the gospel into public schools. I had mentioned on the interview yesterday we did with Matt Armstrong, I had before I came across Crossroads Kids Club, truthfully, I'd almost given up public schools as basically a lost cause. Like, all right, the kids, we're just going to have to pray that they survive public school and then we'll get them once they come out. Crossroads Kids Club said, no, that's not on our watch. And so they're going into the public schools and getting the kids while they're there, bringing the gospel to them really is amazing. And so once again, let me just remind you, we're trying to sponsor 100 children to be able to take part in Crossroads Kids Club. So we need 100 listeners to donate $384. That is our goal. 100 listeners, $384 over the next 2 weeks. And that's equivalent to that $32 a month per child, which gets a child through the Crossroads Kids Club 1-year program. That's about $1 a day. And just remember that your gift is doubled now through Friday, March 14th. So as of today, folks, great start yesterday. We got 9 kids supported, so that's over $3,000 raised. We're well on our way. I would love to see 10 more children supported today. So 10 more gifts of that $384. That would be great to get us continuing to that point. But it's as the Lord leads you to give, folks. And let me remind you too, if you can't give financially, maybe you've already given, or if you're in a place where you just can't give financially, there's also an option for you to be able to write a card to a child and to be able to send that card to them. So if you can't give any financial, gift, that's okay, because ultimately it's not about the money, it's about spreading the gospel. So we want to provide that for you as well, folks. So you can check it all out at reachourschools.com. Reachourschools.com is the place to go. And again, if you're watching on the TV feed today, you can see that QR code down on the left-hand side here. So just make sure that you will do that today, folks, if you haven't gotten the chance to do so. We want to provide you that opportunity to fund the light. Again, reachourschools.com. So, all right, folks, let's move here. Sam, some interesting news we saw. Scott Bessent talking about the tariffs. Of course, the tariffs implemented today on our neighbors to the north and south. But Bessent said some interesting things about this. What can you tell us about what the Treasury Secretary said?
Yes, indeed, Seth. The tariff bell has tolled, and it is ringing loud and clear for China, Mexico, and Canada. And they're not liking what they're hearing. And frankly, neither are some economists and investors. They're kind of concerned that this is going to cause an inflationary effect, jack up those prices even higher. So our man, Scotty Boy Bessent here, he's trying to come out and ease some of those fears to say it's not going to be as nearly as bad as you think, especially when it comes to China. Here is his comments over the weekend.
When you say the Peterson Institute's too alarmist with $1,200 a year on the average household, what's the cost to the household? Do you think it's zero?
Well, we don't know yet because it's path dependent. But what I can tell you is that I'm not worried about China. China will pay for the China tariffs because their business model is exporting their way out of this deflation. They are the most unbalanced economy in modern times. And the idea that because of a tariff that they would lower their production is wrong. They are going to continue flooding the market. They will eat this price decrease. They will eat any tariffs that go on.
So you hear Bessent there saying that China in particular is in no position to play the trade war, considering that they're mainly an export economy and they just cannot handle playing that game. We'll see if that's true. China is making some big noises about how they're going to respond, but we'll just have to wait and see right now. Is that real or is that just, saber rattling or something along those lines? Meanwhile, Bessent is also reminding everyone that Trump is taking a more holistic approach to the economy, that his whole strategy to this stuff isn't just focused on tariffs, it's also focused on tax cuts and deregulation. So you'd be mistaken just to focus on the tariffs. So here's Bessent in that regard as well.
We have the experience of President Trump's first term, where the tariffs did not affect prices, and it's a holistic approach that there will be tariffs, there will be cuts in regulation, there will be cheaper energy. So I would expect that very quickly we will be down to the Fed's 2% target. So I'm expecting inflation to continue dropping over the year.
There you have it, Seth. So the question now is, are your fears alleviated?
I'm not so sure they are, Sam. I do still think that 2% target just seems to be a pipe dream to me. That said, I am very pleased with the holistic approach to the economy, and I do think that is the mindset that the Trump administration is looking at, and that's the mindset we need to have with this as well, folks. A lot of the critics of the Trump administration are criticizing the tariffs in a vacuum. They see the tariffs, makes them nervous, while not realizing all this other stuff when we're talking about about tax cuts and different things like that, you can kind of see, okay, this is starting to look like a puzzle piece that actually makes sense. And this might be what needs to happen in order for us to get back to a place of strength and greatness when we're talking about a financial perspective for the United States. So, Sam, to answer your question, I think overall I feel pretty good about it. I'm with you that it's kind of like, okay, we have to wait and see with this and kind of see what happens. We'll try to make some more sense of this. I had mentioned to Shana during the last break, we didn't get to talk about it on air, but it looks like Mexico actually has responded that they will bring some retaliatory tariffs on Sunday. There's not the specifics of what those will be. And Shana did make a good point that anything could happen between now and Sunday. So it's not like we can really say a specific percentage of what those will be, but we got to keep an eye on that as well. So overall, Sam, I feel good about it because I'm confident in Trump and I'm confident in his, in his team and his ability to get this stuff done. For sure. What about you? Not to ping pong the question back to you.
No. I mean, I agree with you 100%. It has to be done in a more holistic approach because as I've drilled home multiple times on the show, the only way tariffs are going to work is if they're accompanied by aggressive deregulation and tax cuts. Absolutely. The tax cuts to alleviate the pain, which make no bones about it, will come because of these tariffs. It is going to drive up prices. So hopefully you're going to accompany those with tax cuts so that people get some relief there, but also deregulation so that the economy can grow on top of those tariffs, which, by the way, Trump isn't doing just for the sake of it. He's also doing this with the mind of rebalancing the playing field. I saw the CEO of Goldman Sachs saying that earlier today, to say that that's the main goal of these things, to level things out so that we can actually deal with a much freer world in terms of trade and also reshore investments back into the United States, which we are seeing to great effect.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Thanks for that update there, Sam. Quickly, folks, before we get to the ag here, did want to mention Nelson from Louisiana asking about a commentary. Nelson, you can expect that sometime this week. I need to get with Shana to confirm when that will be up, but she and the analytic team will be meeting also. Got a great comment there from John, which we probably won't have time to get to in this segment, so we'll have to save that for the next one. Meanwhile, the markets here. So yesterday to start the week, the indices opened the week positive, but then they fell pretty quickly as midday approached. So early afternoon, several factors were plaguing investors, most notably those tariffs. By late afternoon, much the same. By Monday's closing bell, all three indices pretty considerably down. The Dow Jones was down at 1.5%, NASDAQ down 1.25%, and the S&P was down 1.25%. The NASDAQ was down over 2.5 percentage points. And as we've opened this morning, it looks like the markets are still under some pressure as well. So we'll talk more about that coming back. We got the Ag Report coming up here with Craig Haugaard, and then we'll be back with more financial issues right after this break.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for March 4th. The corn received some positive news yesterday when the weekly export inspections came in at the very top of trade expectations. Unfortunately, that was the only positive news for corn, as tariffs, improved South American weather, and heavy fund selling drove the corn market lower. Traders were especially concerned that the 25% tariffs against Mexico and Canada and a 10% boost in tariffs against China, which is scheduled to go into effect today, may have a very negative impact on agricultural commodities. As a result, May corn was 13.25 cents lower at $4.5625. Tariffs, South American weather, and fund liquidation also had a negative impact on soybean prices. On the export front, the weekly export inspections continue to follow their seasonal pattern of declining volumes as business is shifting to Brazil. May beans were 14.25 cents lower for the day, settling at 10.11 While beyond the tariff threats and fund selling, there was also an increase in world supplies to drag down the wheat market. The Australian government agency ABAR raised their 2025 wheat production estimate by 2.2 million metric tons, up to 34.1 million. As a result, Minneapolis May wheat was 6.5 cents lower at $5.9125. Kansas City declined by 11 cents to close at $5.62 per bushel, and we had Chicago dropping 8 cents, settling at $5.4775. Cotton futures were slightly higher in a session that featured a very narrow trading range. When the closing bell finally sounded, we had May futures 26 points higher as they closed out today at 65.51. Livestock futures were mixed. April live cattle were 40 cents lower at $192.25 per hundredweight. April feeder cattle dropped by 95 cents, settling at $272.05 per hundred. And April lean hog futures were 2.5 cents higher as they ended the session at $83.70 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures saw their struggles continue. At the closing bell, we had April futures down 18 points at 18.09. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Every day, a child walks into school carrying more than just a backpack. This child carries the weight of loneliness, fear, and uncertainty, and spiritual darkness. But there is hope.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God.
That He loves all of us. He pays for our sins.
This Easter, be part of God's rescue plan by helping a school-aged child out of the darkness. By sponsoring a child, you could help them discover Jesus and put them on a path to a better future. Our goal is for the FISM audience to sponsor 100 children. As an added bonus, a generous donor has pledged to match up to $35,000. This means your gift will go twice as far. Go now to reachOurSchools.com and bring the light of Christ into the life of a child. That's reachOurSchools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hey, welcome back, folks. Before we get to John's comment, I did want to just mention we're in the midst of this campaign with Crossroads Kids Club. Hey, Sam, can we jump back up in the show notes just a little bit here with that Education Department payout headline? I wanted to hear your thoughts on this because I think it's fascinating as we consider what we can do to help Crossroads as they're in the public schools right now. What can you tell us about this payout that happened on Friday?
Yeah, so this is similar to the Doge payout where Donald Trump was saying like, hey, get out now and I'll pay you, 7-8 months severance pay if you promise to get out now and we can just count you off the books. Something similar was happening over the weekend with the Education Department. They sent out an email on Friday saying that if people quit by Monday, they receive $25,000 cash. That email also warned of major layoffs in the near future. So that is expired. I've not seen a final total of how many people resigned. The Education Department is not that big, so I can't imagine it's going to be that many people, but the percentage will be pretty interesting.
And Sam, I'm correct in this. It seems like it common sense, but this is the result of or an effort to downsize this particular place. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm understanding this right.
This is the continuation of Trump cleaning house across all the departments. This comes on the heels, or rather coincides with Linda McMahon. I think I'm saying that right, being confirmed as Trump's education secretary as of yesterday.
Awesome. So, Sam, I'm all for downsizing the education department, especially, when you consider, especially in the last couple of years and really the last couple of generations, actually, there have been a lot of dark agendas that have been allowed to flourish under this particular modern education department. I would much rather have a freer education system. I think that would allow ministries like Crossroads the freedom to teach students about Jesus. Now, the great thing is Crossroads is actually experiencing great success in doing this nonetheless. But I think seeing something like this could maybe give them even more of an opportunity to get into these public schools. And that's what we're trying to do, folks. We're trying to empower them and kind of provide the heels for them to springboard into these public schools across the country. So you can be a part of that with this campaign. If you just follow that QR code we have on the left-hand side of the screen, that'll take you to reachOurSchools.com, where you can consider giving to this campaign, or you can also write a card for a child. And just remember, any gift that you give during these next 2 weeks will be matched by an anonymous donor up to $35,000 total for the whole campaign. So it's exciting to be a part of this for sure. All right, John, I promised I'd get to your comment here. It's a good one there over on the chat. Question might be in tongue-in-cheek here, but John from Alabama is asking, does our government really spend all the tax money from the gas taxes to fix our roads? John, I don't think so. I think the government historically has spent a lot of our tax money on other non-essential things other than fixing roads. I think that infrastructure is one of the good uses of tax dollars, as well as military and upholding the law. But sadly, in the last several years, it has seemed that our powers that be have spent tax money on things other than these necessary things. So hopefully we'll see a change of course there for sure. Sam, am I off base there at all? Was it a little kooky, or am I onto something here?
No, I think roads would be a good investment, right?
I think so.
Although it's important to remember that most roads, that's state level stuff.
It
that
is,
has nothing
yeah.
to do with the federal
Yeah,
government.
for
So
sure.
like, I'm surprised when we see the Baltimore bridge that collapsed that we're trying to give federal money to fix that. I realize that it's going to be expensive, but honestly, that's a state problem. That's the localities of Baltimore problem, and it just goes to show how out of whack we are of thinking how governments are supposed to work and where ultimate authority lies with these things. We think all things need to be fixed by the federal government, and that's just not true.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of federal funding here, Sam, we got some great news yesterday, and this could have some big implications for sure. But folks, if you missed this news, there was an update on the funding that we have been giving to what many have labeled the 51st state, Ukraine, over in Eastern Europe. There is a lot to talk about this here, Sam, but the big news that we saw yesterday, of course, was that on Monday, President Trump paused all his military assistance to Ukraine following that public spat with Zelensky in the Oval Office. Sam, I'd love to get a sense here of what we've given to Ukraine so far, now that, at least temporarily, it has stopped. What can you tell us about this?
I think Zelensky is starting to learn the motto, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, right? You know, Trump was saying you don't have the cards, and Zelensky's like, oh, I certainly do, Mr. President. He's learning he really doesn't. So Trump is pausing all that military assistance for the time being, probably making Zelensky think twice about his life choices. So we'll have to wait and see about that, though. He is a stubborn guy. But yeah, this was a good opportunity just to break down what have we actually spent on Ukraine. And I want to be clear, I'm just looking at the official numbers here. Trump claims this is much higher. I don't want to dispute whether that's true or not. Just for the sake of what we're talking about today, I'm using these official numbers. As of December 2024, global aid to Ukraine has reached $430 billion. So that's across the board, all countries. Of the countries that have spent the money, the U.S. has contributed by far the most per individual country. They have spent, we have spent $128 billion. Europe has collectively spent more, and they also have vowed to give an additional $120 billion that still needs to be allocated. So the longer this war goes on, it could be that Europe does ultimately end up spending much more than the United States. But at this time, the U.S. as a single country is by far the biggest backer of Ukraine. Most of that is military equipment and weapons. Broken down by GDP, however, the U.S. has given about 0.5% of its GDP in money to Ukraine. That's less than Germany, which is a big backer. They've given 1.3%, as well as the UK. They've given 1.9%, and Canada as 0.6%. Smaller countries like Norwegian countries and Eastern European countries, they've given the most per their GDP. So that'd be like Denmark at 3% and Estonia at 4%. I hope that gives you an idea of just what we're looking at with the mass amount of money flowing into Ukraine and where those dollars are coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, I'm glad you said we have given $128 billion, because it is very personally we have done so. It has been our tax dollars that have been taken for these last 3 years to be able to, do that. Sam, I found it fascinating. We talked about the kerfluffle last Friday in the Oval Office yesterday on the program, but to kind of continue that conversation, I just thought it's fascinating. When Vladimir Zelensky acts in Ukraine's best interest, which he is welcome to do, by the way, he should do that as the president of the country. He should act in Ukraine's best interest. But it's fascinating that the global sentiment of Zelensky seems to be he's a hero. When Donald Trump, the president of the United States, acts in America's best interests, now the global sentiment becomes he's an embarrassment, he's a racist, he's mean, he bullied Zelensky, he and J.D. Vance teamed up on him like a schoolyard fight, and they just bullied him, and that wasn't nice, and I don't like it. Something's not making sense to me here. I mean, is Donald Trump not allowed to act in the best interest of his country as Zelensky is his also? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm maybe I'm being a little too harsh here, but I feel like Trump should be allowed to do that as well. That's just my opinion here. But anyway, Sam, I really do appreciate you bringing those numbers up. I think it's good for us to see, the breakdown of how much money has been given to this war in particular. I think the tide could be turning here, Sam, and I'm thrilled for it. I think this war needs to be stopped. I think it needs to be stopped before it becomes really serious. As Trump said to Zelensky, you're flirting with World War III. You're messing with World War III. I think he's right. I think he's absolutely right. So
we just can't keep issuing blank checks to this thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's exactly right.
It's just insane.
Yeah.
Although I want to point something out here. I think it's important to look at that GDP number because you see a lot of Republicans, and I understand what they're saying, and I largely agree with them. They say we're trillions of dollars in debt. We can't just be spending this money on Ukraine. In the grand scheme of things, it's not all that much money. I know it's crazy to say that $128 billion is not all that much money. But it's not. The reason I bring this up is not to say that we should be funneling all that money to Ukraine, but I want you to keep that number in mind. So when you hear a Republican complaining about the money being spent on Ukraine, I want you to make sure that they're also complaining about all the other boondoggles, the social programs, the entitlements, the things that are really jacking up the debt. I just want you to keep them consistent because I think a lot of Republicans who maybe aren't naturally fiscally conservative are using Ukraine as a little bit of a scapegoat so they can pretend that they really want to bark about the debt, that they care about the debt, because they know base sentiment is so against Ukraine that it's easy for them to complain about fiscal responsibility. But when push comes to shove about the things that really are costing money, they're probably not going to really want to lift a finger because that's going to be more difficult to come out explain how we're going to make those cuts.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Absolutely. Sam, I think this also says a lot about when we look at our own hearts, and there's been a lot of virtue signaling going on in the last several years. There has been a trend, and you've seen the virtue signaling continuing starting, you saw back in 2020, you had Black Lives Matter, you had, wear a mask or you're going to kill grandma, make sure that you do that. There was virtue signaling there. Now it was, I stand with Ukraine. But it seems like I stand with America just isn't quite as allowed. I think it's a really good reminder for us that we need to not be swayed by whatever is popular in the public sentiment, that we need to stand on the truth at all times. And a good reminder that, we find that truth in God's word. The truth will set us free. Boy, good reminder for us, Sam, there. I appreciate it, brother. Hey, real quickly here, folks, before we sign off, Target did report earnings. I think it was this morning, Sam, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
maybe it was last night. Yeah. So,
or it could have been late yesterday. I'm not sure.
Yeah. It was after the bell yesterday, regardless. They beat on earnings per share, 2.41 versus 2.26 expected. And then they also slightly beat on revenue as well. So we'll see if Target can turn course there now that it seems, at least for the time, they've abandoned all of the woke nonsense. Doesn't mean that they're biblically responsible. We're not encouraging you to invest in them, but still a good thing to see nonetheless. George, I apologize. I wanted to get to your question today. Did not have time for it, so we're going to have to save it for tomorrow, brother. But I appreciate you all so much joining today. Please do consider giving to our Crossroads campaign here. We're trying to bring children out of darkness into the light, so check them out, reachOurSchools.com. God bless you all. Remember, it's all His. Let's be found good and faithful servants with what God has given to us. Till next time, we'll see you then.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.